Welcome back, folks. This is Texas Tales, the official podcast of Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine. I am your host, Joshua Shive, and I have my co-host back this week, James Cossum. James, how was your Christmas? How are things going? What's happening in your life?
Well, it's good to be back. I always hate to miss an Everett episode. I know there's some powerful knowledge that I missed, so I'll hop on YouTube after this. But no, it was a good Christmas. I did a little bit of duck hunting. Now that I got my deer filled, I dabbling in that. That was good. And yeah, we had a good Christmas all around. Great food. That's always the problem now. It's like, man, this New Year's resolution's got to kick in at some point. What about you?
Well, the holidays are always terrible when it comes to crappy food and just throwing the gym out the window and just going, oh, that's all right. I'll be back in January when it actually matters. So I fully get that. It was a good Christmas. It felt weird because the weather, I think, it was so hot. So it didn't feel like Christmas. It felt like we were just opening presents in July. So that was kind of strange. But overall, the kids got everything they could have ever asked for, even more. And, we enjoyed ourselves. Probably drank a little bit too much wine, but that happens. So, but
You're supposed to do it.
other than that, I have not been hunting. I have not been fishing. So we're excited to close out the year. And then we're going to the deer lease. And then next week, we're going to be on the water and we're going to be able to fish for a couple days.
You're listening to the official podcast of the Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine, Texas Tales, with your hosts, Josh Shive and James Cossum.
Very good. It was funny. My nephew's like 5, 6. We do Christmas at my brother's down the road, and we got there, and he comes running out the door with this deer rifle he got for Christmas, and it's like, man, you talk about a throwback. I don't have the kiddos yet, but it got me instantly. I remember at that age, I got my Remington 870, like the American, like the premost every gun every American or the gun every American should have, and it was so excited for it. And just seeing him run out with this little sub or little compact like Creedmoor, and he's telling me how excited he is, and he was just begging my brother, like, "Can we please go shoot?" And he's like, "No, buddy, it's still deer season. Well, after deer season, we'll get you tuned up." And he was just livid.
Oh man, I remember those days. Just when you get a new gun, it could have been anything, a 22, a shotgun, a deer
Pellet
rifle,
gun.
anything. You're just immediately, hey, can I put some shells in it and let's go shoot it right now? The patience is just not there.
No, it was funny. And then it was hilarious because my oldest brother, not his dad, was going to hunt at a little place down the road. We do early, like noon Christmas, so everybody can hunt the morning and hunt the afternoon. And he looks at my oldest brother, and like I said, he's like 5 or 6, and he goes, "You got any monster bucks on camera?" And my oldest brother's like, "Yeah, I got a couple decent ones." All right, I'm going with you. And it was
Um,
hilarious. He just looked over, and he was dead set he was going to go hunt because he's got his deer rifle and he's got to start sitting more. And he was all about it.
so has he ever hunted before?
Oh yeah, yeah. He's went and sat a ton, but now that he's got a rifle, he's a hunter. It's kind of like the change. And so it's been pretty funny to see like he was like, he would kind of more reluctantly go or wanted, the FOMA, didn't want to be left behind more than he
Right.
really wanted to go. But like I said, it was my favorite question. You got monster bucks?
So you were able to go duck hunting. How'd you do on the duck hunting?
Well, we did all right. We hunted Friday after Christmas. Shout out to my wife for being cool with that one. It was foggy as all get out. It's a friend, so I purchased a boat back from him forever ago, and we stayed pretty close. And he runs a fly fishing service out of Nueces, and now he used to do duck hunting. He's getting back into it, and the fog was outrageous. That airboat ride, it's funny because the airboat they don't have neutral and they don't have brakes and they don't
Right.
have reverse. So you're going like 25 miles an hour consistently in the fog. It's a pretty eerie feeling. And we did okay. Birds moved significantly later. I think he said on the afternoon hunt they limited out in like 5 minutes, and
Oh
we
wow.
grinded it out. Yeah, it was a great group of guys though. That's kind of always been my gripe when I've duck hunted with like mixed blinds. You always kind of just don't know what you're getting. Just was with some fantastic individuals, but yeah, it was a Southwind Charters or Southwind Outfitters
Okay.
out of Port A, and they was awesome. It's always so cool, and I'm not a duck hunter, so everything to me is just so like like insane or it's just so like crazy. It's like 100 decoys.
That's the worst part of it. Every time we go duck hunting, and Everett, now that he's getting a little bit older, we tend to be the ones putting out all the decoys, and he'll still get out there. But he's normally pointing and telling us, oh, hey, you need to put that, you need to move that spread over here. And every time I'm looking back going, I've already thrown them out 3 times. I'm not picking them back up. And then when the hunt's over, then you get to be the ones picking them all up. And where we hunt it in Port Lavaca, it's real, like the rice field is real marshlandish, if you will. And so every time you take a step, you're a foot in the mud. So it's a long process to put the decoys out, bring them back in. So I kind of look forward to those hunts where they're guided and I don't have to do any of that.
It was so funny. I was already a little reluctant to go because I was like, man, the pre-front trout are just so tough to beat. And I was like, nah, I'll go duck hunting, something different, fun opportunity to experience something different. And literally the entire sit in the damn blind, we had like 4 or 5 really nice redfish just tailing in the
Oh,
decoys.
man.
And it was killing me sitting there. I was like, I even brought a rod and reel just in case. And no, it was cool though. It was funny. I know it's true, but I guess it's just not living in the reality. The blinds in Texas, if they're in the coast, if you're unfamiliar, they're public lands.
Right.
So it means you could build them, drive the posts and everything. I know you're familiar with
Very
this, but yeah,
familiar.
if you drive, you could drive them, the post in, you could brush in the blind, you could do everything. You don't actually own the blind. It is part of public property, so it's a race to get there first. So I arrived at the boat ramp at 2:30 because we were in a pretty heavily hunted area, and he goes, if we don't get there early, and he had some other clients that we picked up back later, but just to kind of get the spot laid out. And I was laughing. I'm like, nobody else is going to be on the water. And sure enough, like by like 3 o'clock, you could hear little mud motors running all around us. And he goes, well, at least we know we got our spot.
Yeah, a lot of times when I was younger, that's all we hunted was public marshes, and we take the airboat way back in the back. And I can honestly say I never went out and someone else was sitting in our blinds. As I got older and I started hunting on my own, there were times where I would just sit in a random blind and someone would show up and kind of be looking at me and I'm looking at them, and you don't really know what to do because it's like that unwritten rule where they're like, hey man, that's my blind. And it's like,
How did you handle that?
so I was pretty easy about it. The guy goes, hey man, that's our blind. And I said, hey, no problem. It's not a big deal. I saw an open blind and it's kind of late in the afternoon. So I figured why not? But I get it. Even though knowing it is public land and that is not technically per se someone's blind, but they did put in the work. So I'm not looking to take that away from them. So I ended up getting out of there. It was a buddy of mine with me, and I was like, well, let's go fishing. Let's do something else.
That's interesting. They didn't ask you to join.
Nah, they weren't really excited that I was there. Now, I will also say there was a time where it was early in the morning and I went out and we were just out in the bayfront and we were sitting there wade fishing, and I was coming through this cut, and it was shallow, not too deep. And as I'm coming through the cut, it was pretty foggy morning. There was a blind to my left about maybe 40 yards. And as the fog cleared, I see 3 hunters looking at me, and I'm wade fishing looking at them. And that was kind of a moment where you're like, oh shit.
I got to give all the credit in the world. The duck hunters I was with were pretty serious about it. To me, it's kind of a novelty, so I don't take anything too serious. They were such good sports about fishermen, kind of like being quote unquote in the way.
Right.
It cracked me up where we had a guy who drifted into us, and could hear us shooting and stuff. But he had pushed a bunch of bluebills our direction, and it was so funny. They were like cheering him on, and I'm like, well, he's probably pushing more birds away than he's helping. And like, yeah, but he might bring us these, and he's having a good time. He caught a good redfish just over there, so he's on him. And I was like, man, guys, kudos to y'all. Y'all are being way better sports about it than I would be if like this was my thing.
Most people are pretty respectful, and I've got a bunch of stories from when I was a kid and when I was first taking the boat out where I didn't you don't really know about a lot of the unwritten rules where, if you see somebody drifting, it's probably best you try to stay away from their drift line. And those are some of the things that I didn't know as a younger fisherman, just now getting to where there's you getting into this boat that can take you across the bay. And there were times where, and really big shout out to some of the guides out there that I pulled up to, and I had a spot. I knew there was a good spot and there was a guide and fisherman in it. And I tried not to get too close, but I got pretty close. And I think they recognized who I was and I could see who they were. So they were like, hey, come over. We're catching right here. Just come on over. We're very nice about it, very kind. But those were some of the things that as you get older, you're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just basically walked up to these guys when they're fishing in this spot catching, and I'm just being a little moocher.
Well, we've talked about that, like the feeling of like when you shoot the bad deer or you wound a deer. It's just the same where you look back kind of on these moments as you grow and develop as a sportsman. And like you said, they're not written rules, so it's hard. It's like the duck blind thing. I've always kind of had this like half interest into duck hunting, and I'm so thankful that like I've got some people that I know and trust to take me to do it the right way. Because to me, it would just be like, all right, it's public land, not knowing, not doing it to be begrudging, not doing it to be ugly, but just like, well, it's an open blind on public land, tough stuff. But now, kind of understanding a little bit more the nuance and the etiquette. Like the etiquette, it's just kind of like that weird thing of like, I'm not trying to be, the bad guy. It's funny. I'm writing an article about the duck hunting experience, and there's an Aldo Leopold quote where it's basically like, there's only two types of people in the woods, in case you didn't know. There's the good guys who are in your group, and there's everybody else. And it is kind of that funny, like main character syndrome. And it was paraphrased as like, there's the good, there's your group, and then there's just assholes. That's all that exists in the world of outdoorsmen. And it's funny because it's like, well, yeah, like that's how I feel because I'm doing this. But yeah, I give the duck hunters I was with 100% credit. They were all really good sports about it.
Well, a lot of it is when things happen, how you approach the situation will determine what that outcome may be. So I was fishing, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and I was fishing with my wife and my son. And there's this, I won't call it a back lake, but there's a lake that has a canal, a pretty long canal that runs into it. And we're coming through that, and there's a boat sort of at the entrance, and then there's a boat right at the point of where the canal meets the lake. And my first thought is, oh man, I really don't want to mess up their fishing because there's no way around it. And in order for me to get in this lake, which it's a big lake, so you could fit 20 boats in there, but there's someone sitting right in. And so as I kind of creeped up to him, I kind of hollered at the guys and said, hey, I'm just trying to get in the back lake. Which do you want me to get closer to your boat, or do you want me to get way on the other side by the shoreline there? And they're like, hey, just go by the shoreline. It's fine. And so cruise past the first one. Then we come up and there's another one sitting there. So I'm like, crap. Same thing. Hey guys, sorry, don't want to ruin y'all's fishing. I'm just trying to get into the back lake. Do you want me to get close to you, far away? And just having that conversation to show, hey, I'm sensitive to the fact that I don't want to screw up your fishing, but also I need to get through. So help me understand what you would. All right, technical difficulties, but we are back. Okay, so yeah, talking about etiquette and some things that you don't recognize as a kid, and as you get older, you start to. And I think more of it is just being aware. And my wife always likes to say, reading the room. So if you're reading the room on the water and boats are drifting in certain areas, or if fishermen are waiting in certain areas, it's best if you stay and be respectful and stay as far away as possible, and knowing to where you're not disrupting their fishing. So yeah.
Well, and I think if I understand you correctly, you're inevitably going to be in the way of someone else, and someone else can be in the way of you. But I think you said it perfectly. Where if you make the first outreach of like, hey, I'm not here to ruin your experience. I've got my own thing going. I really do think that sets the tone of the conversation and kind of dictates, like what your presence is. And if somebody responds ugly, then that's kind of on them. Maybe they're having a bad day.
Yeah, and a lot of times, and you watch those videos where the guys are recording and a boat runs right through their drift, and they're just like very outrageous of this, and not really knowing who's driving that boat. Did they understand? Have they ever fished before? Is this their first time out? Is it a younger kid, or not necessarily a kid, but a younger teenager? Maybe they don't understand. And so you're just instant outrage, where I look at it as, well, shit, I've been there before. I was the guy running through drifts and I probably didn't even know it. Someone was yelling at me. So I kind of give a little bit of grace there when it comes to stuff like that.
It was funny. The like last spring, what was it? Yeah, spring of 25. I was hammering red. No, you know what? It was like January of 25. I was hammering redfish and no one was catching. And so it was kind of a weird scenario where guys were pulling crab traps, and they were they were pulling them, I guess, because they hit that time of year where they have to be out of the water,
Right.
and they were dumping all the bycatch, and we had a pretty like strong north wind, and I was on that south shore. Well, all that bycatch that was dead in there was just floating there, and there was a massive school of redfish just up against this bank, just slamming dead crabs, fish, everything that was just floating. And so I was weightless on some flukes, just picking up just these beautiful, but mostly bull reds. And these two kids are in a John boat, like a Havoc with a mud motor. And I could tell they'd been duck hunting in the morning, and they see me killing these redfish. And it was like purely opportunistic. They really weren't fishing, but they literally they just see just fish after fish. And they pull up on me, and they get a little closer, and they get a little closer, and they get a little closer, to the point that like I not only could I cast in their boat, like I could have hit it with my paddle. And I turned around, I'm like, guys, if y'all had just talked with me, we like I have no problem. Like, y'all get up here, let's all catch some. There's more than I need.
Right.
We'll have a great time. And it was so funny. They were like, yes, sir, yes, sir. And so they go about their way after we all pick up like 5 or 6 just great reds. We all go about our way. And they were pulling around a corner, and I hear one of them on the speakerphone. It's like, yeah, some old guy was upset at us for running up on him. And I was like, oh, damn, that one hurts.
And you don't even look remotely old, which is so
Oh,
weird.
it hurt so bad.
Oh, you should see me. I'm the really old guy. So so speaking of that, and I don't know if you've seen the new laws that have gone into effect, and there is a lot of confusion around it, because some people think maybe you can't do certain things, and that's why I like to talk about this, because I don't know everything, and I like for when people kind of help educate me. So the new drone law, where you cannot for any reason use a drone to catch a fish, and that can be whether it's taking a bait, flying it way out in the water, flying it around trying to locate fish, any shape or form which you're trying to catch a fish, it is illegal. And what I thought was interesting, because my first pass of reading it, my first thought was, well, what about the guys who are just filming, and they're constantly just filming footage of them catching fish, and they're constantly filming just them fishing in general? What if a game warden pulls up and sees the drone flying overhead, and his thought probably first is, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but also I know that there's regulations and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts on that new law, and do you agree with the law in general?
Well, we'll do legal talk with James. So it's kind of interesting. So it's not a law in the colloquial sense. Nothing was truly passed. What it is it's a statutory interpretation. And so in states have these, and of course we have them as a federal onset, where regulatory bodies, after they've been appointed by the president, come through and say their opinions on the existing laws. It's a lot like attorney general opinions, but it actually has enforceable weight behind it. Basically, what and I believe it's the Fish and Game Commission, in concert with the aviation department, some one of these departments, has basically come to the perspective that it is not legal to utilize flying aircraft of any sorts, including drone, in the aid of taking fish and wild game which kind of the interesting element is what about the recovery of
Right.
like whitetails? You know, those guys use those thermal drones. I see that's like my algorithm. I love those videos. There's a big question mark there. And so, anytime regulatory agencies issue these types of declarations, there's always a large gray area. And to make matters worse, if you follow Texas Parks and Wildlife, they've kind of issued a little bit of a nothing burger as to what this means because this is a federal regulation, meaning that the state can't do anything to override it because, of course, the supremacy clause. But but the state does not have to enforce it. It's very similar to like the drug regulations currently in the United States. And my early feelers I got from the press releases is that Texas Parks and Wildlife, the like game wardens themselves, would not be enforcing this regulation. I have since seen other like post and media releases that makes me believe otherwise. Uh, Personally, I think it's silly. I really don't think that there's any way you can justify this law. I think one of the regulation or like the means to those regulations was that it was for like low flying aircraft, and to me, it's always instantly like, well, like demonstrate that to me, and I haven't seen any conceivable evidence that like recreational drone flying isn't by far more threatening in these airways over fishing. Like I don't understand what distinguishes it because fishing flight would be significantly lower in more isolated areas. I think it's all kind of silly, but like I said, anytime that these agency rulings come out, there's always just so much gray area, and I don't think that Texas Parks and Wildlife's done a particularly good job clarifying it. Because you and I are pretty good in the know, and I think both of us go kind of are scratching our heads.
Yeah, and it's sometimes you look at some of the laws and you kind of scratch your head on what they're trying to accomplish because some of the laws kind of conflict with other things. So and I'm very common sense, crayons, everything is black and white to me. So that I don't do good in gray area. So when I look at regulations like this to where it's aiding in catching fish and that is uh, regulated to say the least. So in that situation, what is that accomplishing? And that's where you kind of lose me. What are you accomplishing by that? And how does that, because you already have a bag limit. So if you have a bag limit, are you trying to reduce the folks who use those drones to help aid in catching fish is bag limit? So then I'm thinking, well, then why wouldn't you just lower the bag limit? So there's all this confusion around what is the purpose. Now, if people were doing truly illegal activities where I can see in certain hunting situations where I may deem that as a little bit immoral, but there's also a bag limit, and that kind of helps regulate the population to where what's the purpose? What are we trying to accomplish with this?
Well, and what I find problematic is the barrier to entry for the sportsman, and where I have such a problem is if you know, like I think that one thing that's really cool that's come out of the 21st century as outdoors men and women is that like the barrier to entrance in terms of like owning a boat, and kind of like those types of like high expenditure purchases are slowly kind of being dissolved by the incumbency of technology. And some of the things that are cool, it's like, well, now these guys that are fishing on the beach are catching massive bull reds and, you know, not get their toes wet. That's pretty neat. And to me, it's like you're putting it in a world where only those who can afford to go, you know, offshore to the jetties, you know, it's like it's just a silly thing that really takes away kind of a fun, unique opportunity. And I'm actually pulling it up on the Texas Parks and Wildlife, and it's the UAS is the law if you want to look it up. And so it's interesting. It's in the of course the federal regulations of the CFR, and it's 19.11. So to look that up and read it over if you're watching this because it is something to be aware of. And it's weird where it's like in the same way gigging is a common practice, droning out baits is kind of a common practice now.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where do you agree with it? And that's what I really like to kind of see what other people think is do they agree with some of these regulations and for me, like I said, you already have things in place to help the population and to ensure that the fisheries is conserved for generation over generation. So when I look at that, what is that purpose? And is there a true purpose. Because I mean, there's laws out there that you really can scratch your head and go, "Wow, I feel like uh, anybody is a criminal," and that's something else. I don't know who said it. There's someone who had a saying that said, "Everyone's a criminal in the United States at some point. It's just a matter of timing." So there's so many laws that at some point you're going to break it and you don't even know it.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. It's kind of crazy too, because like I said, it's one at what point does something become like a traditional practice? And I know it's silly to say drones and traditional in the same sentence, but like at what some point is something grandfathered in? But I'm reading right here, and this is kind of interesting, and this kind of goes back to what I was talking about, the deer recovery thing. Fish or wildlife, wild animal, whether dead or alive, including any wild mammal. So you're telling me I can't go recover my whitetail I shot that's dead on the neighbor's place with my thermal drone?
So, and that's another interesting one because I was after this season, after having the amazing time trying to find my son's deer, and then another buddy who also had one get away. I considered heavily, I'm going to go ahead and purchase a thermal drone just because number one, it's kind of cool. But the other thing is, I mean, because the fact that I can go out there and there's an animal that's wounded and I can help recover it to where it's not suffering. I think that that's kind of a good approach.
100%. It's silly. I mean, it's just absolutely silly.
Now, on talking about regulations and stuff like that, is there any regulations that are out there that you yourself just have never really understood or can't get behind?
Yeah, and it's the only ticket I've ever got. I don't understand. So there's a little bit of bias. I'll of course inject. I don't understand the special white wing season that the shooting hour starts at noon. I would just love to talk to the person that came up with this because it just doesn't make sense to me. What about you?
You know, that's a really good one. I think that for the most part, the hunter's education one, I think it's important. I don't know how effective it is because nowadays you do it online and you watch videos and you answer questions and then you pass and you move on. When I was a kid, it was you sat in a classroom, and I think it was a 3-day course that we sat through, and we actually got to not only learn about different safety the aspects of firearms and stuff like that, but we also got a lot of hands-on type activities to really reinforce those ideas that were trying to be displayed to you. So I think from what it's turned into versus what it was, I don't know that it's very effective anymore.
Yeah, it's the defensive driving you click through it. And kind of on that note, so this happened over the Christmas break. My niece, so they've been after this just beautiful, incredible buck, pretty heavy. And she's my brother, second oldest brother's oldest daughter, and rifle out the window, had my nephew from the other brother sitting with her, and they were sitting there. Buck came out, everything was drawn up correctly. Clicked off the safety, and the rifle went off. And two people there, both, I think one's 13, brother's like 40 something. Was like didn't touch the trigger, great trigger, great trigger discipline. Rifle just absolutely went off. And I really do think, and I always say this, and this isn't being corny or cliche. This is something I really mean from the bottom of my heart. You've got to be so careful with these guns. And I mean, it's a high-end Christensen rifle, no excuse for it. And it really does highlight the importance of gun safety. And I know that sometimes it's the silly stuff of guys who've handled guns forever. It's mostly guys, if I'm going to be honest. And it's like, oh, I know it's unloaded. Always, always, always. And it really highlighted how bad something could have been. I mean, that 6 PRC, if it hits you, there ain't much they're gonna do.
No. And there's so many cases where I mean, I know 3 people that were avid hunters, shot a hole in the wall, shot a hole in the bed.
All Remington 700s.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where you don't ever know. And what I try to practice, because a lot of times the first thing when I get a new gun, I'm I'm dialing down the trigger pull. So I want it to be at the lowest pound that I can get it to where it's not unsafe. And then after I lower it, I'll do the bolt, put it on fire, and I'll just bang it. I'll take the gun and just bang it against the ground, like the butt of the gun, and to see if it'll go off. Because it's a pretty good test to see if that trigger will go off. Now, you don't want the gun loaded when you do that. It's okay. You can dry fire it, keep the gun unloaded. But I like to do that bang
That's
test.
a good pro tip to throw in.
Just to see, do I have it too light? Because if you're walking, you accidentally drop it, you don't want it to go off and kill somebody. So I do certain things like that just to ensure that it won't go off. But a lot of people, they have this, and I don't know where it's taught. I don't necessarily agree with it, but a lot of people do it. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I think that just people, sometimes they do it in the wrong places. So a lot of people, when they come in, they unload their gun, they take the bullet out, and then they pull the trigger to dry fire it. I have never practiced that. I never understood it, but I have watched people shoot holes in their wall. I've seen people shoot a hole in the bed where they thought, hey, I clicked it out, and there just happened to be a different round that either went in or didn't eject properly, and it just goes off. So for me, I never understood that, where after I unload it, I'm going to pull the trigger. It didn't make sense, but I know a lot of people practice that. I do not practice that.
No, that is a great catch. Well, I will admit it, and I'm sure you've experienced it too, where you were handling a gun correctly, and you were pretty certain it was unloaded, and then oh crap, a live round kicks out. I'll be the first to admit I've had that happen with the bolt action before, where you're like, I know I only put 3 in there, and I'm holding 3 bullets, and for whatever reason there was a fourth one, or someone saw it and clicked it in, or whatever happens, or even having like hunting with little ones or something like that. It happens all too often, and now it was one of those moments, like I said, right? It every once in a while you'll hear those stories, and it is just like every chance you get, and don't just be passive about gun safety. That's one thing I think is really regrettable, is you'll be around guys who aren't dangerous, but they'll be around people who are dangerous, instead of saying, "Hey, no, I don't like how you're handling it. Hey, you're not pointing that in a good direction." Especially like dove fields. Oh, that drives me nuts. Where you'll be around guys, especially with I always have bird dogs, and it'll be like, "Hey, my dogs are down there. I need your gun up here." Oh, it's okay. It's unloaded, and it's like, no, I'm not picking BBs out of a dog. It's we're gonna do this the right way.
Yeah.
But no, don't be quiet about it. Don't ever be scared about speaking up. And anybody that's bothered by it, you don't want to hunt around. That's just what that means.
No, and it is an uncomfortable situation to kind of call someone out on their gun safety, especially somebody who's been hunting for a long time. But it's sometimes you just get complacent, and you need that voice of reason to say, "Hey, your gun, you keep pointing it over at my leg, and it's making me uncomfortable because I don't want to get my leg blown off in this duck blind. Can you keep your barrel straight up, and practice good safety?" And a lot of times, most people are pretty good about accepting that. There's a few that are like, you don't know what you're talking about, whatever. And it's best on those, just get away from them. When I go dove hunting, I try to pick a spot that's pretty far away from people, just because I get excited. And if a bird comes across, now I'm not shooting over people's heads or anything like that, but there are times where I get excited and I'm
Oh,
following
you'll
a bird,
follow.
and you don't recognize that there's someone right in your path, and you swing right into them. Now, I've never done that, but I can see how that can happen, just when that excitement, and you're just swinging, and all of a sudden a person comes in your peripheral.
We this is a good aside off this. I had a guy that wanted to go dove hunting, never had been before. It's super safe and responsible. Spoiler alert, nothing bad in that department. But we were putting a hit on birds, and he's like, "Man, my shoulder's killing me." And he'd never hunted before in his life. And I look over, and I had sent him what shells to get, and I had been just throwing them in a bucket, and I pull one out, and I was like, "Let me see that box." He grabbed 12 gauge. He grabbed 2 3/4 inch. He got some number 4 Super Express pheasant load. Those doves didn't know what was hitting them, man.
Oh my gosh. So the last time that I was dove hunting, And this is also kind of a sidebar to just dove hunting in general. It's best to probably take your gun out and go shoot it before you go dove hunting. The last time I went dove hunting, I guess I didn't clean my gun correctly. And I spent the entire time shooting one bullet, having to jerk it out of there, try to get it out as quick as possible so I could get the next bullet in. So going from gun safety to keeping your guns clean to where they can operate effectively is very important because, like I said, I'd say all the time, it's better to learn from other people's mistakes than your own. So that would be one where it's always good to make sure that your guns are clean after the season and during the season as well.
What do you normally shoot?
So I always shoot a 12 gauge, which when I go dove hunting, people look at me like, I don't know, I've got the plague or something. They look at me weird, like, you're shooting that big gun for doves? And absolutely, I want the best opportunity to kill these. I don't need the competition. What about you?
Oh man, I'm an old man. I use a 16 gauge. I hunt deer with a 300 Win Mag, and I shoot doves with a 16 gauge. It doesn't make any sense.
So
I
did you
I do
do that duck hunting as well? You took the 16 gauge?
No, God, no. I've got so it's a remade 525 Satori. I'm very proud. It's like the first nice gun I ever bought myself. So that was not going out in the salt water. Now it was real funny. The friend of mine that I went with was like, "Hey, do you need me to bring you a shotgun?" I was like, "No, I've got a A300, some steel shot that I don't mind bringing out in the salt water." And it was so funny. He's like, "Shoot one of these." And so I used one of his guns, which it always feels wrong to use somebody else's gun. It's like, man, you feel like you're cheating on yours a little bit, but no, it was so nice because it was such a foggy, nasty morning, and the whole time I was sitting, I was like, "You hear that?" And he goes, "What's that?" And I was like, "No rust on my guns."
Now, have you ever bow hunted before?
Yeah.
Have you ever used someone else's bow?
No, so I'm left-handed, so no.
See, I'm left-handed as well. And
Damn.
yeah, so I throw right-handed, I write right-handed, everything's right-handed. But when I was a kid, my right eye was real bad. So my vision was really bad in my right eye. Left eye was really good. So when I first started hunting, I would get down on the scope and I'd start looking at it with my left eye through my scope, but I'm shooting right-handed. And after about 10 deer missed, I couldn't figure out what was going on. And my uncle took me out and he's like, "All right, let's go shoot." So we went and shot and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm looking through the scope." He goes, "Why are you looking at it with your left eye?" I said, "Because I can't really see great out of my right eye." And he's like, "No, it's not going to work." So I ended up switching to left-handed so that I could, number one, see better, but also so my accuracy. And so I started to teach myself how to shoot left-handed. And now I'm just everything solid left-hander.
So the only thing I ever got that was left-handed because everybody in my family's right-handed, except I think I got one brother that's left-handed. But everything I got was right-handed. My parents were like not buying baseball gloves or anything. Was a bow. That was the only thing I got that was left. So I shoot everything right-handed. I can shoot either side, but I prefer right-handed because I've just done it for so long. But the bow is the only thing that I draw back left.
See, and that's the same thing with me. All my guns, they're all right-handed guns. I did have, my bow was left-handed. I got rid of it. And so I was looking at getting a new one, and I was shooting a buddy's bow, and it was a right-handed bow trying to shoot it left-handed. And I decided, hey, you know what? I'm gonna take it hunting. I'm gonna try it out. And I could hit, and I get out there and got a couple does coming in. So I'm like, I'm gonna get one of these does. I was not familiar with his bow and not familiar with the different functions of it. And even I had another buddy who texted me and we were talking about hunting. He said, "Are you hunting?" "Yeah, I'm bow hunting." He goes, "I didn't know you had a bow." And I said, "Well, I did, but I don't anymore, but I'm using so-and-so." So he goes, "Oh, that sounds like a disaster." And I kind of started laughing. I was like, "Okay, Mr. Negative." And so the deer come out and I'm getting ready to shoot. And the trigger on the little pull that he gave me, I pulled that and I shot about 10 feet over this doe's back. And I didn't know how I did it because I was target practice. Everything was fine. But somehow, as the intensity of the moment, and I got my finger too close, and all of a sudden it goes off, and there goes my arrow about 10 feet over this deer. So it didn't work out too well.
Well, if you ever need, I'm looking at my crossbow hanging on the wall. I'm a cheater these days.
Hey,
You-
that's like shooting a
it
12
was
gauge at Dove.
Oh yeah, why wouldn't you? It's so awesome. It was so funny. I remember I always kind of I didn't know anything about no. I don't come from bow hunters. Like we're very like man people to utilize adjustable turned scopes in my family was a hell of a fight. So bows are just a non-starter. And so I always thought kind of like crossbows were junk. Like I just was like I don't know, just instantly written them off. And I went and shot one, and I remember I was like the groupings were insane. The trigger was fantastic. They're obviously dangerous as hell,
Right.
but it shot super well. It was so easy to load. And I literally was like, well, I'm buying one of these now. And it's the greatest thing because if we do get the cold fronts during bow season, it's nice to sit. Plus, with that, we're that limited county to shoot does. So you can only get them during that special doe season,
Right.
archery, youth, or muzzleloader. And so I was like, well, yeah, it doesn't hurt to have around. But yeah, I love the crossbow, man. So if you ever need it, it's hanging up. Come grab it.
Oh, I definitely will. Next October, I'll be ready for it.
Yeah.
Now,
Get your kids, man. It's fun.
now, in a lot of countries, bow hunting is illegal.
Mhm.
And I don't know, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a pretty sound argument if we're being honest. It's made out of the ethical sense,
Right.
and honestly, it's the same thing I think with people who try to say they can judge flounder when they gig them, and they can tell you exactly if that flounder's 15 inches. You're either passing up on a lot of fish that are like 15 and a quarter, which is fine,
Right.
or you're lying. And you'll hear archery people who will say, I've never wounded a deer. And maybe they haven't. But it's bound to happen. I mean, I don't know anybody who's archery hunted for any length of time that hasn't wounded a deer,
Right.
wounded a pig. And so I do understand the grounds. Like I think the argument's sound if you're going to say from an ethical sense. That being said, I think it's a traditional practice. It's quite literally one of our oldest hunting historic practices. And I always have a soft spot in my heart for protecting those because I do think that they have an intrinsic cultural and personal value. What about you?
I mean, for me, I'm just like you. I'm old school. I think that from an ethical standpoint, I can understand the argument because I have seen, especially people who take their kids out and they want their kids to shoot with crossbows. I've seen them wound animals and very difficult to find at some points. But overall, I think that it's an old school practice. It goes back further, like you said, than any other practice. And it is a challenge, and it kind of takes us back to that, I won't say caveman kind of mentality, but it really brings out that hunter in us, and it's a really exciting feeling that you get to feel when you harvest a deer with a bow, which I never have before. So I've never really gotten that. Now I've killed other things with the bow, but what I will say is for bow hunters, I think you are doing a disservice if you're not practicing regularly. And this goes with gun hunters as well. If you just go out there and just go shoot and you're just okay with that, I don't necessarily agree with that because no matter you're shooting with a rifle or a bow, if you don't practice, bad shot placement is going to wound an animal and it's going to go for a long time and it's going to suffer. So I think it kind of goes for both of them. I'm more against people who just go out there and think that they're just ready to shoot right away, which is never the case.
No, and you're just your margin for error when you're bow hunting is just so much lower. It was funny. I was on a standby hunt down the road at one of the WMAs, and it was an archery standby hunt, and it was funny. I had my crossbow, and I never bring it out at first because you know the crap you get from the guys that are there, and it was so funny. One of the guys was like, "Well, what's your disability?" I was like, "Well, Texas, you don't have to have one." And an old man there goes, "You're gonna give him crap for using a crossbow," and he goes, "I guarantee you have the fanciest one pin digital sight by Garmin, the biggest cams known to man that allow you to draw back 90 pounds, carbon fiber arrows." And it was funny. It is just the weird exception. I get it. I'm not going to pretend like I don't get the difference, but it is hilarious to a guy with carbon fiber everything to tell you it's like, oh, you're using that technology.
Hey, I will not judge anybody that in any shape or form does whatever style of hunting that you like, because no matter what, it's all very difficult because you have to control your nerves. You have to know so many different things and understand so many different things before you're even able to harvest an animal. So, hey, the technology's there. We may as well use it. Just going back to the drones, why not?
Yeah, it is so funny to kind of come full circle in that conversation of like we have such weird exceptions when you think it's taboo in most states that you're allowed to bait, right? Like that's a weird thing.
Right.
But it's so funny, like in Texas, and then in some states you can do dogs to drive. Deer drives are still legal. It's really funny when it boils down to it, the little cultural nuances that each state is determined. It's like that's okay,
Right.
but everything else that's wrong.
Yeah, and that's the interesting time that we live in because technology is not going away and it's only getting better. So you can only imagine what's going to be available for us in the future, and the conservation aspect of it. What do you do with it? So kind of leading into that, 2026 is literally 3 days away. What are you, from a conservation standpoint, what are you looking forward to in 2026?
First off, that was a masterful transition. Goddamn, write the book on that. That was perfect. No, yeah, the 2026 goals. For me personally, one of the things that's been really a big goal of mine is I want to get it published nationally. I think that's something that I'd like to. I think I've really loved writing for the magazine, and I've got to write for a few different other places now. But I really want to see somewhere nationally. And one of the funniest things has been um, writing from the perspective of kind of like the generalist. I really enjoy that, and so that's one thing is I always want like I hope our listeners out there. I hope you drown shrimp. I hope you shoot doves with the 12 gauge. I hope you have a crossbow hanging on your wall. Like I really do think that like our world we live in, our time is so limited. It's truly is about like maximizing and not trying to have this like vision on nature where it's like you have to get something, but realistically like a bottom line results focused, outdoorsman where it's like you got to justify it to yourself somehow. So you got to have some deer in the freezer at the end of the season. I do try to kind of embody that. So that's a big goal of mine is kind of as a conservationist getting to write about that, and that like those experiences are okay, that you want to hunt over a pile of corn and shoot a deer and you want to put some meat in the freezer. What about you?
I think for me, a lot of it, and I don't like to make New Year's resolutions because if you look at the statistics of New Year's resolutions, most of them fail after 2 weeks, and you're kind of right back to the person that you are. But there are some things that I enjoy, and I know that I can stay consistent with, and that's really getting the opportunity to teach others the importance of conservation and getting them to understand why it's important. And really from my own kids, my friends' kids, anybody that I have the ability to take out and to either hunt or to fish, is really getting them to understand why we conserve, why it's okay to release fish, why it's okay to pass up certain deer. And so that they can take that with them and then further that. So it's kind of, you get a group of kids and you talk to 10 of them, 6 of them get it. Well, they're going to go off and talk to 10 other kids, and then that just expands and expands. So it's really, for me, I love spending time with my family in the outdoors, and I love when I get to hang out with other families in the outdoors. And so I really enjoy being able to teach them from all of my mistakes, as well as the other mistakes that I've learned from other people. So I think that's a big part of my 2026.
That's a really good goal. So what's the fun goal? What's your fun 2026 wildlife goal?
So I have and I don't know if it's a 2026 goal, but I've got maybe 5 years left to do this. And if I don't do it, I'm just going to go ahead and tell myself it's not happening. So I have always wanted to go on a miserable Colorado elk hunt or mule deer hunt and spend the week, if not 2 weeks, being in the miserable cold, horsebacking up there, sitting by fires, really just asking myself internally, why am I even doing this? This is miserable. But then when you get to harvest that animal and you get that reward of all the work that you've put in and that misery that you went through, and you're sitting there looking at that and going, man, I did it. So I wouldn't call it my fun goal for 2026, but I will say that is next 5 years, I have to do it. Once that window passes, I'm not even looking back. I'm just going to know it's never happening.
Oh, you could do it. You'd be fine. You stay in good shape. We went in 2020, with my brother Chris and I, and we did the outfitter and everything. And so the first day we were on the mountain, we were at 11,000 feet, and
Oof.
I'm a low dweller. I live at sea level, and I got the altitude sickness so bad it kicked my butt. And so I did all the preventative measures. And so the first night we were up there, it was 38 degrees was the low, no snow on the ground, dry as can be. The next night we had 4 foot of snow, and the low was -2 degrees, and the
Oh,
high for the next day was 3.
oh,
And it was you talk about, like, I've been cold before. I've never been like that, where, like, if you took your water out of your bag and didn't put it
freezes.
back instantly, frozen solid. And it was just like, holy crap. And they talked about, and especially the mountains and low oxygen, you get this weird desire to lay down. There's that Jim Reeves song, I think it's Blizzard, where it talks about him walking his horse back to the barn and he keeps wanting to lay down. It's a great song if you haven't heard it. But anyway, it's kind of like that, where you're just like, man, I just want to lay down. And we were sitting there watching, and they kept warning me about that. They're like, this extreme cold, you just want to shut down. And we were glassing this valley, and it was so weird. I caught myself going, well, I'm just going to lay against the spruce for a second. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to lay down. And I was like laid in the snow, and it was that weird come to me. I'm like, whoa, 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 wait a second. It was incredible though. And the riding, nobody harvested that year. It was a horrible year for elk. There was fires to the north of us, so all the over the counters were in
Mm.
our unit. But the riding out down the trail on the horses in 4 foot of snow was just like it's like the most like inscripted memory I've ever had. Like, it's really cool.
See, and I think the only thing, obviously, from a financial standpoint, that's an investment. So, and that's the thing that has always made it to where I've never done it, is because it's not guaranteed. And
Hmm.
because it's not guaranteed, that means you spend that money and hey, and it's experience. You get to talk about it, but you don't really have anything to show for it.
We had been pretty affordable. So the over the tag license was the worst part. It was like $600 for that. The outfitter we went was super affordable and really good service, minus the horse that rolled on me. We were coming down, and I've been on horses, not a ton, but enough. And the horse was stumbling the whole time, and the guy goes, "Well, use your spurs." I'm like, "I don't have any goddamn spurs. I'm up here on an elk hunt." And we're coming down a little switchback, and the horse rolled on me, and it was my brother was literally like, "Oh, that's it, like,
He's
sayonara."
done.
It's like, I gotta go tell mom this is gonna suck. And I just remember I was like, my rifle's broken. Like, that's what I was worried about, because it was 4 foot of snow, so I literally just like imprinted in the snow, and the horse just went over the top of me.
Oh
And
my
I
goodness.
never didn't even feel it, but it was so funny. It was like a little like Acme cartoon, where it was just the perfect outline of me imprinted like all the way in the bottom of the snow. And I just remember him coming over and looking at me, trying to figure out how bad this was, because I mean, this horse just went completely over the top of me. And I just remember looking up at him, and I was like, "Is my rifle okay?" And he's like, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm hoping that I can get that done at some point in the next 5 years, because I know it's going to be miserable, but I know that also it's going to be really enjoyable and a great memory to have. So, James, it has been a wonderful 2025. I think for the both of us, we are very blessed in everything that we have, and I'm grateful for the podcast and being able to get to know you and get to meet you and to talk everything hunting and fishing. So, Merry Christmas. I know it's already passed, but Happy New Year as well. And looking
Happy New
forward to
Year.
2026.
Yes, sir.